Welcome to the Heartland Running Podcast. Join Crystal, Andy, and Chandler as they explore all things running related in the Heartland and beyond.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Heartland Running Podcast. I'm Crystal.
And I'm Chandler.
And I'm here tonight. We have two very exciting guests, and I'm not going to do any other funny, goofy stuff. I want to just jump right in. The first guest that we have with us actually doesn't need much of an introduction because I believe this is a three-peat for him coming on. And we have race director extraordinaire Steve Durbin with us. If you want to go back and learn more about Steve, the first time he was on episode 8, and that was a solo interview. It was just you and Steven talked about some great stuff there. And then another fun one was our anniversary episode. That was episode 37, and definitely a fun one. We had Steve on with Laz and Naresh. So if you have not heard those ones, you definitely want to go back and listen to those. And with Steve, we have Camille Herron. And so now normally I would put together some kind of bio highlighting all of achievements and stuff like that. If we did that, it would be the entire podcast. You have some pretty cool stuff that goes all the way back to high school. So I thought in order to keep it brief, I'm going to steal your bio from Twitter. So this is what it says on Twitter. It is, she is the 17 Comrades champion, 50 and 100 mile world record holder, plus trail FKT, 2 times world champion, research assistant at OU Medicine. And as she puts, I was born to transcend and so were you. So welcome, Camille.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love that intro, and I also like your voice.
Thank you. I love yours. You know, I was warned ahead of time that that you're very serious and hard to crack. So hopefully we can get you to lighten up a little bit on this one.
That's hilarious.
We'll do our best. So kind of you've been in the news everywhere lately, and which is kind of funny because people are kind of almost saying like you've come out of nowhere. But like I said, you've had stuff going all the way back to high school. I mean, you have a very impressive record. So I think we'll kind of start with your most recent achievement. We'll work backwards and we'll see how much we can fit in. I feel like we could do like a whole podcast, like series, just the Camille podcast and still not get to everything. So we'll kind of start. So let's see. So at the time that we're recording it, it's just a little over 2 weeks ago, you set the world record for the 100 mile at Tunnel Hill, which is Steve Durbin's race. So that's really exciting. And not only did you get the world record, you smashed it by over an hour. You're now the only woman to have ever gone under 13 hours. So really, really exciting stuff. So, but before we jump into your race, I want to start off with Steve, and I want you to tell us a little bit about the race itself, about Tunnel Hill. I know it's the 4th year for the race, and it's kind of become a big deal. I mean, this isn't the only record that's been set there. You've had some other, big records set there, both in the men and women's 100, Corey in the 50. So kind of maybe tell us a little bit about the history of the race.
Okay, great. Thanks. As you said, 4th year for Tunnel Hill. It's the Tunnel Hill State Trail, typically known as a bicycle trail, and that I've had a somewhat tough time convincing them to add a running trail to that because it's been featured on the National Rails to Trails magazine that's published out of Washington, D.C. It's rated as the top rails to trail in the state of Illinois. I used to ride the trail bicycle with my daughters. I lived in Paducah, so we'd go over, and I knew it was a super smooth, super fast course. Shaded. I love the trees. If you go south, you've got the wetlands area, the old cypress trees and all. That's really cool. Go north, and you've got all these great rock formations, train trestles going over it. You think of a rails to trail, and you think, it'd be boring, but really it's very pretty. That area of the country, people come and go rock climbing there. They come 200 or 300 miles. It's one of the best areas in the region for that. I always wanted to have a trail run there, or 100 mile and a 50 miler. I already have the Land Between the Lakes, and it goes to 50 miles. But I knew that was like the perfect surface for a fast time. And everything I tried to do about it was designed to be fast. The aid stations are about 5 miles apart, and they're easily accessed, all except the north turnaround. It's shaded, so you don't have to worry about too much sun. I picked November so we wouldn't have the humidity. I wanted it just to be fast. You can run at night without worrying about tripping over roots and such. I've run a bunch of really nice trail runs, including Rocky Raccoon and some others that are fast courses, Umstead. So those were my first 100-milers. But at night, I always had to worry about roots. I mean, I would say, man, you could lose a small child in some of those roots at nighttime. Camille, I don't know if you've run those. So Tunnel Hill, when I was talking to some of the people over there, they were saying, oh, we need to go to this great overlook. It's the prettiest site in all of Southern Illinois. I'm like, no, I don't want to go up. I just want it to be fast. And so the very first year, we had the polar vortex moved in. It's supposed to be like 60 for the high and 40 for the low. Well, it was 18 at the start.
Ooh.
Didn't get above 28 the whole damn day.
Oh, gosh.
I know. And I was fortunate that my good friend Tracy Falbo was there. I had run 6 days in the dome with her, where she set the world record at 48 hours. And it was funny because after a couple of laps, she was like, hey, Steve, can you get me in Tunnel Hill? And I'm like, sure. And after she sets a world record there, I'm like, oh, man, I bet she won't come now because everybody's going to want her. But I was fortunate that Tracy ran a 14:45, which at the time was I better say fastest known time so people don't have to come apart. But and Camille knows what I'm talking about. It's 14:45, which was the fastest at the time. So she pretty much put us on the map, and everybody knew Tracy because she was coming off of the world record. So it wasn't just Mary Sue from down the block who ran a 14:45 at Tunnel Hill. It was somebody well known. So it gave us instant credibility. The next year, Mike Bialik won with the 12:52, and that was the fastest 100 miles in North America by 40 minutes that year. So he blitzed it. The third year, Corey Waltering ran 5:30. So he had the fastest 50-mile in North America until it was eclipsed at JFK the week after. But he still had the second fastest. So this year I had Mike coming back, and Tracy was injured. So then, fortunately, I got the email from Conor about Camille, and I'll let you talk about the rest.
Yeah, so I'll take over where Steve left off. So I had heard about Tunnel Hill just because of Tracy. I met Tracy a couple years ago at the USATF meeting, and I was over the moon to meet her, knowing her stats and her achievements. And so I knew of Tunnel Hill because of her. And, my husband and I, a couple weeks before the race, we were in the airport in Dublin, Ireland. And I was just kind of Googling on my phone to find out when was Tunnel Hill, because I was just kind of curious, and I hadn't even thought about running it. And I saw on the website that it was USATF certified course on trail. And I kind of went, holy cow, I've never seen that before. And so it was, I'm very active within USATF, and, I'm very aware of records and, criteria that's needed and that sort of thing. So, it was a very unique situation, I thought, to be able to go for potentially a world record and to do it on trail. So I was very, very excited. And they were calling us to board the airplane. I'm like, quick, Connor, you got to message Steve. So, we're literally flying over the ocean, back to America. And I think we got a message from Steve, and we had the internet, fortunately. And so we were really excited to hear from him really quickly. And so we were able to get me registered like about a week and a half before the race. And then we just had to work with Steve and Brandon Wilson, who's the timer and the course certifier, to make sure, that we had everything in place to make sure it could be a legitimate world record. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So you get that email, Stephen. So you have 9 days to get ready. And I mean, there's a lot of logistics to making it count as a world record.
Yes.
Let me say something here. Last year, when I first on the trail, I was like everybody else. I didn't know you could certify it. So last year, and what I used to measure the course initially was a calibrated bicycle computer. Jason Claunch and myself measured it independently, and we both got 100 miles. So we were pretty confident that it was a 100-mile run. So last year, a good friend of mine, Davy Jones, 65 years old out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the age group record for the United States was 1945 for his group. Well, Davy ran 17:35 at Tunnel Hill.
Oh.
Yeah, beat it by 2 hours, 10 minutes. And now Davy he's a former Badwater champion, and he's a hell of a runner and nicer guy. And a lady out of Canada, also in 65, beat the Canadian record by 4 hours.
Oh,
So I called Brandon Wilson, a good friend of mine, who's also a USATF official and also a higher ranking course certifier. And I'm like, hey, can we get these age group records ratified after the fact? And he said, let me go measure it. So he came up to certify the course. When he wrote it, he did indeed get 100 miles. But when you're going to certify a course, you have to figure in a short course prevention factor of 1.001. So Tunnel Hill is actually certified at 100.1 miles. And that's to keep, now that Camille has set the record, when they come out to double check to make sure. The last thing you want is it to be 99.93 or something like that, right? So they throw it out. So anything 100, it doesn't have to be 100.1, just at least 100. So that's kind of a fail-safe that they build in. And that's why I pushed to get it certified, because I didn't want to tell another friend of mine that I'm sorry, no age group record for you because the course is not certified. So we got that done in March of this year. You were saying 9 days. We had so we had a certified course by USATF and IAAF. We also had timing mats, and we had 6 timing mats already. So we're talking to Brandon. What else do we need? And he said, well, the turnarounds, we need either video or somebody writing down that. So why don't we just get 2 more mats? Well, I don't know if so we had to jump through a bunch of hoops to quickly get those. We actually, those arrived on Friday.
Wow.
The last 2. Now we could have moved the North Welcome to the turnaround, and we could have done that at the other end too. We were going to do whatever it took. Now I wasn't aware of the manual stopwatches. We knew that we had to have somebody from the World Anti-Doping Agency there. Mm-hmm. I'm glad Camille took care of that. Yeah. Stopwatches Brandon knew about, so he had that. So that's pretty awesome when you consider 6. We started 6 manual stopwatches by 6 different people, and when Camille came in, 3 people stopped 3 of those watches, and then when Mike came in a second, they stopped 3 more. And the 3 watches for Camille's all read 12, 40. So pretty cool. They're worried about electronic slippage on electronic timing. So I think the timing showed 39. It probably would have rounded up to 40. So it was spot on that too. That was really cool. Okay,
yeah.
For a minute.
That's awesome.
That's the background of what happened and how we tried to get ready.
Yeah.
The last thing we wanted was something to go wrong for Camille, because
exactly.
when a woman says, "Hey, I'm born with wings and I'm ready to," you have to notice that. You have to appreciate that and do whatever you can to help her.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah. Another thing to mention that's we're talking about, for the course certification, we're working within the limits of what the paperwork is with USATF, and they only allow, I think the only choices on the paperwork are to choose road calibration or track. And so then it further delineates the type of surface, and so then it's I think it's, what is it, like
it's paved, concrete, or gravel, I believe, are your choices. Or it asks what percentage of each of those.
Yeah, and so it really was up to Brandon, to decide if he could certify this course, being on 100% gravel. And so, it was certified as a quote road course, but the actual surface was 100% gravel, which, as Steve has pointed out on social media, that according to the ATRA, our governing trail association, that anything that's unpaved is classified as trail. So this is definitely a trail. This is not a paved surface. And so, that's really important to point out to people that, it's certified as a road course, but the surface type is 100% gravel. So,
when Tracy ran her 14:45 in 2014, she actually finished and she told me, "Hey, I think that's an American record." And I go, "Oh, really? It's not certified or anything?" And she said, "Well, it's a trail." So she checked with the American Trail Runners Association, and the question they had for her was, "Is it paved?" No. Well, then it's a trail. And I think the International Trail Runners Association is the same. So.
Yeah.
When he calibrates the course, you have to set up a calibration of a course of, say, 1,000 feet or so. It's a hell of a rigmarole to go through. I've certified courses as well, but it's down to the nubbins, and so you measure and you get your numbers based on the trail itself. It's hard packed, it's smooth, it doesn't change year to year like most trails do. And that's why most trails have a problem with certification, because you could cut switchbacks or whatever, unless you lined it with cones or something like that to keep people from cutting the course. At Tunnel Hill, if you cut the course, you're hurting yourself. There's no, is that right, Camille? It's just let her rip.
Yeah, I mean, being a rails to trails, it's a standard distance across, and then it drops off on the sides, and so it's like, why would you run on the sides? You're gonna stay right there in the middle.
Well, and it was funny because while I was out running, because when I was running Tunnel Hill, I did the first 50 with Scott Black from Sword, and this was one of our conversations while we were out there. We were wondering, how do they certify the course? And so we had jokes like people were out there with like ropes, and you had to go like every foot, and you're like measuring it like that. So I feel kind of better knowing that it was a bicycle computer. That sounds a little bit better than out there trying to measure every inch with a rope.
It involves. It's steel tape, like tape measures, and pulled with the tensiometer to a certain tension, and just precisely marked one way, and then you turn around and come back and check it the second way. And anytime you get any sort of deviation at all, you always set it up to where the runner would have to run extra. You always fell on the side of the runner would run more. And then when you ride the bicycle, you ride it in the shortest, take all the tangents where a runner would run the absolute shortest possible way. And then that's how you measure it, even though most runners can't do that. One thing about Tunnel Hill, and Camille, you may see what you think about it. On a track, you're always fighting people going around slower people or in and out. Tunnel Hill, you just run.
Yeah. And, I was planning to go for the world record at Desert Solstice. And, I haven't done a track race in over 10 years. And so the thought of, doing circles around a track just seemed a little bit more unnatural to me. So, when I saw that Tunnel Hill was a certified trail course, it was like,
That's the sound every time Steve walks into a room, isn't it, Steve? You hear the trumpets playing.
Yeah, I felt so compelled. I mean, it was literally like the perfect situation because, Tunnel Hill basically combined my favorite things about road racing being, running fast and having good footing. Combined with trail running, having the nice scenery and, the soft surface. And, it was like this merging of the best parts of ultra running, period, So I was super, super excited. And I just felt like it was like destiny to be there. So
clearly it was. So let's talk a little bit. So we've talked about course logistics. Let's talk a little bit about your logistics. And so one of the things is your crew. Did you have a crew with a man of one?
Yeah, I got to give a lot of credit to my husband, Conor. He's both my husband and my coach and my crew. And he was over the moon too about the course because it was really, really easy for him to crew, versus being up in the mountains and trying to get around the roads up there, and so he went and checked out the course like the day before, and he was checking out where he had to go. And I mean, he came back and he was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so easy.
That's awesome. Well, I heard it was so easy that did I hear that he was having beer and popcorn while he was waiting?
That's accurate. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to come prepared with whatever I might want to have, and obviously, I think he was enjoying a couple of beers on the side.
Well, it's fun. I mean, he had you in and out of those aid stations. I actually have a funny story. So because the way the course is set up, you get to see, the elite runners in the front of the pack people 3 times typically. And so we saw you go by twice. And then the 3rd time I was at an aid station and I was in the porta potty. All of a sudden I hear all of this cheering. I could hear your husband, go, 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 and like yelling out times and splits and stuff. And I'm like, I'm trying to, by the time I got out of the porta potty, you were gone. There was just a dust. And I'm like, she was in and out faster than I was in and out.
Yeah. Funny enough, I've gotten a lot of people asking me because they're like, but I did have some bathroom breaks. And I didn't go to Porta-John. I made sure I maybe had people in a distance and then just kind of went off to the side or whatever. But, that was kind of a benefit too to, being on a trail versus, a track. In fact, I don't even know how they do that. Like maybe they have to go to Porta-John on a track race. But yeah, I mean, I ran what I did with, a couple stops along the way, but for the most part, we really had it down with our crew and grab my stuff and keep running.
Well, I'm also super impressed that, I mean, you guys must have something real special. Fact that he's able to, I mean, my husband was out there and crewing and stuff, and you see a lot of, partners out doing that. But the fact that he can coach you as well, I mean, that's a pretty special dynamic. Do you guys ever have any issues, or is it?
I think it's actually the perfect situation just because he knows me so well. And, when he first started coaching me back in 2004, it used to just be that I just did what he told me to do. And I never really thought about what I was doing or how I felt. It was kind of like he just told me what to do. And then maybe about 2009, I started thinking more about how I was feeling every day. And I started giving more feedback to him on what I thought I needed to do. And that year was when I really started to improve a lot. And I think, that's kind of how we've continued to work is, we take it a day at a time. And, I also have a day job as well. And, that some days I come home from work and I'm tired and stressed and maybe I have a workout or, something. And so yeah, I mean, he knows my energy level and he knows how I'm feeling day to day. And, we can make those decisions rather than, going off of a piece of paper or something. So.
Oh, that's great, because sometimes I feel like it could go, either way. If you come home and you're exhausted or whatever, and he's like, nope, you got to go, get your butt out. No excuses.
I mean, Yeah, I think I'm pretty self-motivated, actually.
Yeah.
If anything, he has to pull back the reins most of the time.
Oh, that's good. So he's that
Conor
voice on the
was a
shoulder.
very accomplished runner in his own right. Didn't he run a 2:15 marathon?
Yeah. You know, I'm very fortunate that like when the whole running thing was when we started out, when I first met my husband, he was the elite athlete, and I was the one that was basically crewing him for his long runs. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's kind of how it started. My husband was a 6-time All-American at the University of Oklahoma. And then he went on to run 2:18 in the marathon. And then eventually he got into college coaching. And his teams at OCU, he won 3 men's cross-country national titles at OCU. And so, you know, he's obviously an excellent coach, and he's been able to take not just what he does with me, but, you know, apply it to groups. And I think he has a really good sense on, you know, working with the individual and what the individual needs, and, you know, just developing somebody. And so he's really just been able to develop me, and, you know, taking me from being a hobby jogger at one time, you know, to breaking a world record.
I can't picture that.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that one too.
she was hot jogging at probably a 6-minute pace.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I also saw the time for your debut marathon somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it started with a 2. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
you know about our Guinness Book of World Records, don't you, Crystal?
Oh, you know, I do know about that, and I think it's like the coolest thing. So yeah, tell us about that other record.
Yeah. Well, you know, funny enough, like, I mean, I've done a lot of different things, and probably my biggest like claim to fame before this was I did this world record for racing the marathon in a superhero costume. So dressed in a head to toe Spider-Woman suit, a pink Spider-Woman suit. I ran 2:48:51.
Oh. Now, did you have like the mask over your face too?
Yeah, it was a full.
How did you breathe?
It was really hard, actually.
How did you drink? Like, did you pull it up to drink and stuff, or did you just like, did you drink?
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like a full body leotard, and I actually it didn't have holes in it originally for the nose and the mouth.
Oh.
So I had to cut. So I had to cut holes so I could breathe and you know, take in water or gels or whatever. But yeah, you know, the craziest thing that when I first put on the costume, I realized that I was claustrophobic.
Oh, geez.
I almost had like anxiety attack. I thought I was going to pass out because I felt like I was going to suffocate in it.
So did you train in it, or did you just go out to do the marathon in it?
Yeah. So fortunately, the marathon was a couple weeks after Halloween, and so I went for a couple runs like before.
She caught a couple of bad guys too while she was out.
This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I did a couple of runs in it, and you know, I went for a run like after Halloween, and probably everybody's like, look at me like, doesn't she know Halloween's over?
But boy, is she fast.
That's just it. Like, who's going to argue with her? She's rolling down like 6 minute, you know, something miles dressed as Spider-Woman. You're not going to mess with her. Oh, that is so funny.
It was really fun. You know, I think the coolest thing about that was just how people reacted. You know, I mean, they had never seen anything like that before, like somebody winning a marathon in a costume. I mean, you know, the crowds, and I even had a can of silly string that I grabbed from one of my friends.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, I not only had me running in the costume, I had a prop.
Oh,
yeah, that was your web. That's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
So when I shot the silly string, like at the last mile, the crowd like erupted.
So were you spraying it along the way, or did you pick it up at the end?
I sprayed like the last mile. I sprayed it, and I even like posed like Spider-Man.
Oh. Wait, you had time to pose and still run. What was it, a 2:47 and win? Oh,
it was pretty epic. Yeah,
that's so cool. Oh. Okay, going back to Tunnel Hill. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
I love this. So what was kind of your strategy going in? I know you were going for the world record. Were you gunning for a specific time? Were you looking to go under 13 hours? Did you kind of set it as a time goal, or did you have a pace set up? How did you kind of set the strategy for that?
Yeah. So basically, like I had run a 50 miler 2 years ago, and I finished 21 minutes behind Zach Bitter. And so Zach holds the American record for 100 miles. And so I just figured, well, maybe I could run, 40 to 50 minutes slower than what he's run. And he did that time on a track. So, judging by, Tunnel Hill being on a trail, I kind of thought, well, I might be like maybe 20 minutes slower or something like that. And so I kind of set like a conservative goal of saying, okay, if I break 13 hours in my first 100 miler, like that would be pretty solid.
I love that. That's a conservative goal. That just blows my mind. I'm going to set a conservative goal of going under 13 hours, which nobody's done, but I love it. You're the best.
I'm sorry, I didn't think about it that way.
How aware were you of Mike Bialik? Because Mike really wanted he wanted to win as well, and he wanted to get that 12:44 fastest known time. So he put forth a hell of an effort too. I think he stoned you a little bit, but I think the effort of trying to catch you eventually cost him, and it probably cost him about 10 minutes on his time at the end. He wound up with 13:02. Yeah. So talking about my goal and how I knew to go for that. I had seen that Mike had run 12:52 there. And, and so knowing that I would want to run, on a track or a road, like 12:20, 12:30. So I thought, well, if I run between 12:20 or 13 hours, and if I'm around with Mike, that, that's a pretty good first 100 miler. But, as far as what that equates to for an effort, that's around for me about a 75% of max heart rate effort.
Oh.
So, I do a lot of heart rate training, and so that's like, my easy to steady long run pace. I know it's hard to wrap my head around it now that I think about it. But so yeah, I had done some training, like my long runs, like practicing that effort just to know what it felt like. And I was practicing on road, and so yeah, I kind of just zoned in on my own personal effort, but during the actual race, I had Mike, and so I would have been happy to just run the whole race with Mike, just run together, that sort of thing. But at the same time, I wanted to be able to push myself and, to run my own race. And so I can tell you that during the actual race, when Mike was behind me, it literally felt like a lion was chasing me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm winning. It's not very often that a woman wins a race outright, and it was kind of scary and weird and awkward for me. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, and even like I had to stop and like use the restroom, like after, like maybe between 26 and 30 miles, I had to stop a couple times, and he wasn't too far behind me at that point. And I'm just trying to, take care of business and keep running. And But yeah, I mean, like later in the race, and I didn't know how far behind he was. I think at one point it may have been like 6 minutes, and then it was 8 minutes, and then and so I was kind of keeping a pretty consistent gap on him. And but yeah, I mean, I part of like trying to transition really well with Conor, and not lose too much time, and realizing that I'm winning the race, and then just this feeling of, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm being literally chased by a lion. And so it was kind of a bit of adrenaline for me to to be winning the race outright, and like the excitement of that.
So you came through in 6:07 for the 50, which, by the way, is exactly what Mike came through 2 years ago, and he came through in 6:07. He had some issues down at the south end. We had Harvey Lewis there, who's a national champion in his own right, and of course Tracy Falbo was there too, and we were just hoping that we knew that you had not finished 100 due to some bad misfortune on the other ones. But we were just, wondering, oh God, I hope she hasn't gone out too fast, because you could have played it safe and ran like a 6:28 or something, 20 more minutes, and just kind of paced yourself the whole way like that. But it was really cool to watch you just say, the hell with it, I'm going for it.
Yeah, and the other thing about the course is the fact that there weren't mile markers on the course. The entire time I was just zoned in on my own effort and trying to focus on this 75% effort that I'd practiced in training. So I actually had no idea that I was going as quick as I was. And do
you like that, or do you wish we had mile markers out there?
I looking back on it, I think it made it more pleasant. I think it made it I really just felt like I was out there for a long run. And it kind of combined, like I said, my favorite things about road racing combined with my favorite things about trail racing, because most trail races don't have mile markers. And so it was I want to say that it was probably the most pleasant race experience I've ever had.
Oh. That's awesome. That's a great testimonial. I like that. There are markers out there. They go with the old train markers from years ago. So you'll see it. You saw them, and you could actually probably check your watch between those two just to get an idea of some of your miles. But they're in the 200s, like 235 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I did see those overnight because, unfortunately, and most of our listeners know, I ended up having to drop at 76 miles. I had really bad tendonitis in my foot. In fact, it's still bothering me. So I got to a point where I could walk. But so from that last aid station, is that 3 or 5 miles coming back? It's 5 miles, I think, coming back in.
That's right.
Yeah, back to the park, and I was crawling. And during the day, I feel like you don't see the mile markers, but at night they're reflective, I think. And so your light really picks it up. So I'm like, oh, there's a mile marker. And then 25 minutes later, I got to the next mile marker. I'm like, oh, I don't want to see those.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And here I had this this idea that, I'm just going to hit 75% effort. If I did that, I could run between 12:20 and maybe 13 hours. And, you forget that, or at least I forgot, going into it, that there's so much more logistics and so much more to the race besides, just hitting your pace. And so I those are things that I didn't really think about or account for. And, one thing that I didn't really think about before the race was how the darkness was going to impact me and running with a headlamp. And I train a lot in the dark because I run a lot in the evening time anyways, but to have basically no light and to be reliant on just my headlamp for that long, I think it really changed my perception. I thought I was going faster than I was.
Yeah, I think night does that to you. In typical trails, you've got to watch out roots and rocks and all that. It just really slows you down. And that's one of the things I liked so much about Tunnel Hill.
Yeah.
You're not to worry. There could be a stick that could fall out of a tree and you could trip over a stick or something like that. But basically, you're not going to trip over a root or a big pothole.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's cute that you're talking about running at night and you were out there. Well, I guess it gets dark about 4:30. So you had about 3 hours of darkness.
Yeah. And so it's funny to look at my splits and to see, this sudden like drop off in times. And, it was all because of, it got dark and I flipped off my headlamp and my perception of my effort that I was giving like kind of changed. So, but yeah, it definitely was a more pleasant experience versus, being on technical trails where, I'd be having to watch my foot and that sort of thing. So.
The other thing I'm really fascinated by, and I want to spend some time on this, is the shoes. Because your shoes, I don't know how many people realize what you wore, but that particular shoe has been a hot topic in a lot of different running groups and stuff that I've been in lately, and the talk of whether it works and all of that. So tell us a little bit about what you wore and kind of describe the shoe for those who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah. So, we watched the weather and, if it had rained, I was going to plan on wearing trail shoes. But fortunately, it was dry and cold and it was just perfect, really. And so I ended up wearing the Nike Vaporfly 4%. Which is their road marathon shoe that their top marathoners have been wearing. And so, they really created this shoe, like hoping that it would be used to break the world record in the marathon. And,
well, it broke a world record.
You broke the one that counted.
That's right.
So yeah, I've been training in the shoes, and I had worn out my first pair, and I had to contact my guy at Nike, Pat, and he got me a new pair of shoes like 2 days before the race, and so I only had 2 runs in those shoes, and I mean they say not to wear a brand new pair of shoes for your first race, So I took a chance with these shoes, not having really broken them in, and I wore them for the race and did it on trail, and I basically proved the shoe.
Yeah.
So if you doubled it, that 4%, you had like an 8%, didn't you?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm like, well, I still think that, behind every great shoe is a great man or woman. So.
Well, yeah.
Usually standing in them.
Yeah, but they're really soft. That's the thing about them is I've learned with ultras and with road ultras that I like a really soft shoe because after you've been out there for so long, you want something that your feet kind of sink into. And man, I mean, these shoes, I just kept going and I just kept springing in these shoes. And, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to watch video and pictures and stuff and, to know how I felt, 80 plus miles into the race. And really my legs felt good the entire time. I think I had a little bit of cramping, like maybe like the last 20 miles. And I actually had a supplement called Hot Shot that that marathoners have also been using. It's kind of like a hot pepper was like capsaicin. Yeah, you'd have to try it for yourself because it's pretty spicy, but it's supposed to help with cramping. And so I took like maybe 2.5 hot shots during the race. And like to be honest, like my legs felt really, really good. Like, and I it's so funny. Like another thing to mention is like there were a couple times that I dropped things on the ground and I had to stop to pick them up. And then like I'd be trying to get back up and I'd be like, oh.
Feel good until you stop moving and have to bend over.
Yeah. So knowing that, I was trying to tell myself not to really stop and not, at the aid stations. But my husband, we had planned to have, he was going to give me some beer. And the race was kind of cold, and normally I don't crave a beer unless it's hot. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to shoo off my husband, like, don't give me beer yet. But at the same time, it was kind of nice. I ended up stopping finally around just after 80 miles to have my first beer. And
wait. So you also noticed she said I stopped to have my first beer, not to have a beer. That was my first beer.
So, wow, first beer ever.
Yeah, so we were trying to hold off, but like when you're running that far, like I think you got to treat yourself to something and have something to look forward to, and so yeah, we had definitely planned to have a little bit of beer out there, and
yeah.
Yeah, but I tried to quickly get going again because I was worried about my legs, cramping or not being able to get going. So yeah.
Hey, Camille, does Conor take care of everything that you drink and eat, or do you actually get some things off of the aid station if something looks good to you? And what do you like to eat?
Yeah, there have been times with trail races, like I raced over in France, and I raced in France, and then I raced over in New Zealand, and over in New Zealand they had ginger beer at the aid stations, and I had tried that. I think there were a couple aid stations that weren't that didn't have crewing. And so I knew they were going to have ginger beer. And so I stopped and had some ginger beer, and that stuff was amazing. Yeah. So Conor now, we're fortunate with Tunnel Hill that he was able to crew me at pretty much, I think, like every aid station. Oh, well, maybe there were a couple he couldn't. But yeah, we always make sure we have some ginger beer, and then popcorn, and, we just try to think of like everything I might want.
He asked me at 50 about the Mexican restaurant in town. Because he was going to go get some Mexican in case you wanted that. I didn't know. I don't know if he got it or.
Mexican and beer. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we were like, I like to eat Taco Bell, so like I ate Taco. So I ate Taco Bell the day before, and
wait, that was your pre-race was Taco Bell?
Yeah.
Taco Bell, new shoes. Okay, I'm making notes for myself. I've been doing this all wrong.
No wonder you got tendonitis.
That's right. I've been doing this all wrong.
Yeah, I've been eating Taco Bell since high school, so for some reason it agrees with me. So you might as well stick with what works.
You build up an immunity.
So I didn't know, like going, 30 plus miles further than I ever had. I didn't know how I was going to impact my hunger, and
right.
If I would start wanting more than just gels, and so we were trying to brainstorm solid food options. And I mean, I used to eat Taco Bell between track races, and it always So we kind of had a backup plan if he wanted to go get me some Mexican. I didn't have to eat any of that. So fortunately, it was just beer basically.
Oh, that's so awesome. So Steve, when does registration for Tunnel Hill open for next year?
Probably the 16th of December.
Okay, so that's about the time that this episode's going to release too. So that'll be kind of cool. So you can get to all of your races at Durban Race Management.
.com.
Yeah, .com. And then also want to mention too that you have been very generous and you have set up a discount code for the listener. So HRP 15 is good for all of your races that are open. And so right now I know the registration's open for Land Between the Lakes, which I saw some of that was if only you could see. So we're on Skype. Steve's switching between all of his race hats here. So we'll go.
Still, this is Cap Laz War in the documentary is on the Barkley documentary.
Oh, is it? No, is it the same? Okay, I was going to say, is it the same hat? I'm not sure I'd be wanting to wear the same hat. But I saw that's starting to fill up already.
We have about 300 signed up so far. We've had as many as 900 there.
Okay.
At one time, we were like the second biggest next to JFK.
Oh, that's when
you just looked at total participants.
That's
wow.
Little town of Grand Rivers, Kentucky, population 323.
Oh,
wow.
But that area, I don't know if you've ever been there, Camille, but Land Between the Lakes, it's gorgeous. There's Eagle, Elk.
Yeah.
The two rivers that come between the Tennessee and the Cumberland form the Land Between the Lakes. And so we use an 11-mile loop on the northern section of Land Between the Lakes. It's just simply gorgeous. We have it second Saturday in March before the trees come out, so you get the views of the lake. You don't have the ticks and flies and all that old crap. Lately, we've had a lot of snow. Used to we worried about being too hot 15 years ago when we started it, and now because of global warming, I guess it's snowing every year.
Perfect. Makes perfect sense. Well, that's good. I'll be there doing the 60K.
If we had Camille come to any other races, that would be a big draw as well. And you're always welcome.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're welcome to any Durbin race anytime.
Yeah, you could just show up at the starting line. You wouldn't even have to give me 9 days.
That's funny. Well, I'm glad to have Steve and Brandon in my corner now, because I'm totally up for, if we want to create more events or go for more records, and they're pretty fired up about that. And
we are. We could go for that 50-mile world record. We could
absolutely.
We can do it at Tunnel Hill. I don't know why we can't. Just don't pick the summer when it's so humid. Tell me what conditions you like temperature-wise, and we'll pick a time and
totally
grab some of your friends and I think we can do it. Brandon's a friend of mine, and he's just a hell of a guy. He's had some whacked out races before too. A good person that Crystal could have on her podcast sometime. Conor needs to be on here.
I got to start making all the lists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe I can yell to him, "Hey, Conor! Are you there?" He's in the other room.
Oh.
He's entertaining our dogs.
Oh.
They were wondering if you wanted to be on the podcast.
5 minutes.
Okay, you want me to put him? I'm going to put him on. Here, give me a second. Hold on. It's Crystal and Steve.
Crystal and Steve. What's your phone?
Hey, Conor.
What's your phone there? Hey.
Yeah.
Good. I'm in the middle of an Xbox One video game right now, so I can't stay too long.
Oh.
Are you winning?
I'm getting my ass kicked.
We don't know. You could have told us otherwise.
Yeah.
What was that?
You haven't had enough beer.
Yeah. No, it's too early in the evening for that.
There is such a thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In our household, things don't get going until after 9 o'clock. Once Camille gets going out the door, she usually goes out for her evening run about 9 o'clock. So that's when everything starts getting wild. The dinner starts. Dinner has to be cooked, and the dogs have to walk. So I got it's like 8 o'clock, so I got another hour here, so I'm good. So
okay. How much running do you do now, Conor? You still run a lot?
No, what I decided, I kind of, to be honest, after watching Camille run her 100-mile world record, I kind of says, you know what, I think I'm going to be a better coach than I ever was a runner. So I'm just going to go with, saying I'm a coach, So.
Well, I had a lot of fun just watching you operate on race day. That was pretty cool. The night before and during the race and all that. That was fun. Fun for me.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if Camille told you this, but I tell you, after I was down at the expo and the packet pickup, and I got to meet you, and I I drove around the course. So it was like, man, this is the best situation ever. Good. I came back and I was all excited. I was like, Camille, you better run fast tomorrow, because I tell you, everything is set up for you. So, but no, yeah, it was a great situation, and I really appreciate Steve there. You know, being able to. We only contacted you, not even, it was about like 9 or 10, 11 days out from the race, and saying, hey, we were 5 minutes from getting on an international flight, and Camille was like, you need to email the race director. I was like, okay. So it worked out well, but now it was great. It was great. Yeah. It was good having you. You know, the whole you guys made all of my dreams come true on that, because in the marketing, that was the first question I would ask in all of my ads: how fast do you want to run? And then I would say, do you want to run your first 100, sub 24, sub 20? How about a low teens? And then Camille rips a world record. Wow. I wouldn't have guessed that. Well, you know, she was, you know, she had a few mishaps with a few little races before that, but I knew, you know, just by watching the workouts, how they were going and the consistency, and there was one workout in particular that we did, and she looked just really good, and I was like, Camille, we got to go find, you know, we got to find something here in the next few weeks, because you're ready to pop a good one, you know. So but no, I think just everything came together, you know, between yourselves and the gods and the weather and everything. So, and it was just a perfect day, you know. So yeah, it sure was, because they were calling for rain all the way up until about maybe 30 hours before, and it rained like crazy for about a week straight. That's why we couldn't get the leaves blown off as good as we normally do. Yeah, so you know. Well, I was born and raised a Catholic, so you know I was doing a bit of praying myself. You know, I was on my knees. You know, so I was praying for everything to come together for Camille. Yeah, it was just incredible. Yeah. Well, more important anyway, all this running talk, you know. What's your favorite drink over there, Steve? I never got to ask you that. You know, what's your favorite beer? What's your beer of choice? I like the porters or the stouts, especially in the wintertime. There's a brewery in Lexington where my, you know, of course, I'm a big UK fan, and my daughter is still at school there, pharmacy college. She's wrapping up. Cool. But West Sixth Brewery in Lexington is my favorite. In fact, I was there yesterday. Oh, there you go. Well, and I always bring a bunch back with me, but I'm willing to try some of that ginger beer. Oh no! Screw the ginger beer. We need to. You know, I don't know if Camille told you, but we homebrew, and we haven't done it in a while. Cool. Well, we need to get back, and Camille, we need to get one of those oatmeal stout. Remember the stout that we did? Yeah, we used to do a really good oatmeal stout. So we're going to get on that, and you know, we'll get your address here, and we'll send you off some beer. Although it's pretty hard to do that here in Oklahoma. You kind of have to go into the UPS store, and you kind of have to tell them that you're kind of sending barbecue sauce. So that's how you do it here. But we'll get something out to you here one of these days, you know. Yeah, I wouldn't be against making a trip to Oklahoma or somewhere to see Camille run. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, you're always welcome here in our home. So absolutely. Thanks, buddy. Same thing here. Yeah. Good deal. Good. So have you got anything else to ask me here before I pass it over to the champ? You know, there's an Xbox One game calling me here. So I got to make some recruiting calls too. You know, I'm a college coach, so I actually coach. Congratulations on some of the success you've had. That's pretty incredible. Yeah. I mean, that's a hell of a resume you've got there. Well, you know, I got that big star at the top, you know, world record holder. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, you know, I've been kind of blessed all along, you know, and I've just had some really good mentors in the college coaching business. And I started a program from scratch at Oklahoma City University in 2011, and we won a few national titles. And I kind of took a step back because I felt like Camille needed you know, some extra help and some, you know, just the little things that make the difference. And we did that for a year, and then a good opportunity came along here with the University of Science and Arts in Chickasha, Oklahoma, and they kind of recruited me hard and heavy, so I'm on there on a part-time basis now, and but we're starting the program from scratch. But I have a feeling we're going to be really good here in the next few years with the kids I'm recruiting. So yeah, so I do need to make maybe 1 or 2 recruiting calls tonight. So too. Good deal. Well, good luck. Good luck, Connor. And yeah. Thanks, Steve, awesome. And good talking to y'all. And yeah. Here's Camille back. Yeah. All right. Here's Camille back. Yeah.
Oh, that was fun. Thank you.
He's awesome. I like that guy.
likes you too, Steve.
Yeah.
Oh. He's sending him beer, inviting him over. It's awesome.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I see we're starting to get long in time. So before we start wrapping things up, we have a couple listener questions that I wanted to include. Some of them I'll just kind of stick to the ones that we specifically haven't asked already. Mm-hmm. And then do you have those there, Chandler, as well?
Yeah, I got them pulled up.
Okay, because Chandler's been really quiet. I've been kind of hogging over here. So,
hey, Chandler.
Yes, he is here too. I've been hogging everything.
Hey,
sorry,
everybody.
So the first question we have is actually a friend of ours from the Runified podcast, Matt. And so, do you want to go ahead and start with that one, Chandler?
Yeah. So he asks, if you had some critical success factors for the record, like,
Yeah, I think one thing that boggles people's minds is the fact that I've averaged over 100 miles per week for 11 years.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And
yeah. And
did I see somewhere what's your longest run though? Because you're doing really high mileage weeks, but it seemed to me from what I was reading that you're not doing super long runs. Is that right?
Yeah. So I run twice a day, every day, unless I'm tired, recovering from a race, or if I'm injured. And so I intentionally keep my long runs pretty short, so around 18 to 22 miles. And when I started getting into ultra running a couple years ago, I was kind of experimenting with doing some longer training runs. And I just felt like I kind of plateaued and I started to lose my leg speed and had a harder time recovering. And so I went back two years ago when I was training for the 100K World Championship, I went back to just keeping my long runs pretty short and running twice a day, every day. I even run twice a day on my long run days. So I usually do 18 to 20 miles. And I might do a heart rate progression run towards the end. And then I come back in the evening time and run for about 35 to 50 minutes. It's just a shakeout run. And that people are like, holy cow, how do you go run 100 miles when I've only done 20 miles at, 100-mile race pace? And I just think it goes back to the cumulative volume that I've put in for so long. And I do 90. I'd say I do 90% of my training on concrete, and I train in my racing shoes for most of my training. So I'm really, really comfortable with being on concrete, running really high mileage, running consistently, running twice a day. And, I've really just stuck with training like a marathoner and keeping up my leg speed. I mean, I probably do 2 hard workouts a week, of which one of those hard workouts might be a weekend long run. And so yeah, I think that that's part of how I've been able to run so fast as an ultra runner is I'm just keeping up my leg speed, and I'm intentionally, recovering. I'm not going excessively long. I'm not doing excessive amounts of vertical training. I just feel like when I do excessive amounts of long runs or excessive amounts of climbing, I feel like it just beats up my legs and makes them lose that zip in them. And so, yeah, we've really just focused on the recovery aspect and making sure that when I toe the line for a race like Tunnel Hill, that my legs feel fresh and they feel sharp, and they're going to, they're going to be able to carry that 20-mile training runs that I've done and keep that speed going. And so, yeah.
Hey, Camille, what's your cadence?
Yeah, so I think, I've naturally developed over time a pretty high speed shuffle. Mm-hmm. So I'm probably actually, that's a good question. I'd have to get on my Strava account, but I mean, I probably get 190 to 200 steps per minute. And so, okay. Yeah, I've got a pretty high cadence.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, try for 90 anyway. And so you're 90 right foot strikes or 180 to, so you're saying 190 to, so it would be 95 to 100. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I should point out, I have a very unusual running stride. I actually lift off the ground rather than push off the ground.
It must be those wings that you have.
That's it.
To on Facebook.
Yeah, and so I actually think this goes back to, I grew up as a dancer and basketball player, and so I had to learn to be light on my feet to begin with, and somehow like that carried over into my running, and so I don't generate a whole lot of power in my step, and so I'm not super fast as a marathoner, but the further I go, I just don't get tired.
That's awesome.
Wow.
So
that's cool.
yeah.
The next question I'll jump in is from Andrew, and he wanted to know, when did you know that you had it, as he put it, locked down to the point where you felt comfortable enough to even drink a beer and a half?
Well, yeah, so we actually had figured out the beer thing by accident. I ran a trail race just over a year ago, and I hit a point where I bonked. And I was literally like slumped over in a chair, and they're trying to give me all kinds of things at the aid station. And we had a 6-pack of beer that Conor, we were going to enjoy after the race. And so Conor was like, hey, do you want to have a beer? And I kind of perked up out of the chair, and I said, that sounds really good. So he gave me one beer, and I probably chugged that thing in like 10 seconds.
Oh.
And it was amazing because I had like mental clarity, and it settled my gut, and I suddenly I just popped up out of the chair, and I think he gave me another half a beer or something like that because I was craving a little bit more, and then I got going. And I had a little bit more beer. I had like 10 miles left to go, and I ended up breaking the course record by 27 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, now, we've just I like beer, I do long runs, and I'm thinking about a beer at the end. And so now I'm actually incorporated it as part of my racing strategy. The beer thing just kind of happened by accident, and I can't say that people are going to react the same that I do, but I guess life is too short. You might as well have a beer.
That's awesome. And you actually have a beer sponsor, right?
I do. So the beer that I accidentally drank was Rogue Dead Guy L. And so the Rogue Brewery out in Oregon, they heard about our story with the trail race, and they contacted us, and they wanted to start sending me stuff. And so, probably so once a month we get a shipment of goodies from them. And it's like a dream come true for me.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
So we got a question here from Jeff. He was wondering, how do you train your mind for such a feat, for going that far, that fast, and, breaking something that's never been done?
Yeah, great question. I felt for me, I kind of associate my brain with my training and thinking about how I felt in my training. And so I had practiced this 75% effort, and I really, really just focused on that for pretty much most of the race. But, at the same time, I'm kind of gauging how I'm feeling and, my energy level. And so a lot of the race was just trying to troubleshoot how my body was feeling. And, one thing was I started to feel my energy wavering about the middle of the afternoon, which was just over halfway. And my sport drink just kind of wasn't agreeing with me. And we had to change my sport drink to a higher calorie sport drink called Morton. And so I went from getting maybe about 60 to 75 grams of carbohydrates per hour between my gels and my sport drink to getting closer to 80 to 90 grams. And so that helped to help my mental clarity and my energy level. And I felt like I kind of stabilized better after that. But yeah, the last 30 miles, I was really thinking about, I had watched a documentary on Yannis Koras, who holds a bunch of ultra records for 24 hours and beyond. And so he had talked about how the further he goes, the more he has to find mental inspiration. And so I was really thinking about Yanni's, and that last 20 miles, I was thinking about, certain workouts that I've done and how I felt in those workouts and trying to, dig a little deeper to keep the pace going. But I also have some local friends that have a daughter who has been in critical condition the past couple weeks. She kind of had a bit of a freak accident happen, and so she still is in critical care right now, and so I really wanted to dedicate this race to her, and I was just thinking about her, and and I feel like if you do have you feel like what you're doing is there is a greater purpose to it beyond just yourself. I feel like that really just kind of puts a smile on my face and makes me feel like, yeah, this is really something special. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
The last one, and I don't know if you have kind of a brief answer to this, but BJ was kind of really interested in this, where he'd either read or heard an interview before where you kind of talked about using your medical research, which we didn't really get into a lot of, what you do and what you went to school for, which is fascinating. And again, a whole other podcast on its own. But basically that he'd read that you were able to kind of, lack of a better word, biohack yourself and help heal your stress fractures faster than usual. Do you have a little bit of insight on that?
Yeah. So I talked about running twice a day. And a lot of this goes back to I did have a lot of stress fractures, and I ended up studying bone in grad school. And I basically studied how to enhance bone recovery. And so all the knowledge that I know about recovery is I've been able to apply it with myself and to be able to, get that stress and then also be able to recover really, really well from it. And so there was some research when I think it was when I was in grad school and just beyond that, where they were looking at applying a stress to bone, and they were dividing it up into bouts throughout the day, and they found that it was better to, rather than to have one single bout, it was better to divide it up into two bouts and to have 4 to 6 hours between those two bouts. It was more anabolic to the bone and osteogenic. And so, applying this, I'm sitting here listening to them at a bone symposium talk about this, and I'm thinking about my training and stuff, and I'm like, wow. And so it just really kind of nailed it into my head that, running twice a day is the way to do it. And, I've read about Yanni's chorus. Yanni's chorus used to train frequently throughout the day as well. And so he wasn't doing excessively long training runs. He was breaking his training runs up into shorter bouts throughout the day. And I think there's something to be said about this. I think that, that there's, maybe ultra running the way that, people are training is maybe not the ideal way to train, that maybe there's a better way to do it. And so yeah, obviously, maybe I solidified that point, with what I'm doing as an ultra runner. But yeah, it's really kind of fascinating that I've been able to take that concept and, apply it with myself. And even with injuries and that sort of thing. I've had injuries, and maybe I wasn't able to run, but I would still get out and walk, and I would get out and walk twice a day. And by doing that, it's a low level mechanical stress that helps to increase blood flow and to get growth factors and micronutrients to where it needs to go. And so I've been able to heal injuries that I've had faster. And it's people wonder, how do I have a hamstring injury, and how am I back running 100 miles per week, within a month, and so I think there's something to be said about cross training and, trying to not just be bedridden, you got to get out and move. So.
Absolutely fascinating. You are unstoppable. That's really cool. So before we go, I did have to pass on a thank you to you. So it's from my friend Melissa, who was at Tunnel Hill, and she ran her first 100 there. And she came through. Cool. Well, what's really cool is that she came through the 50-mile portion of it at 12 hours, 42 minutes, and 40 some odd seconds. So as her and her friend Todd are coming through, they feel this breeze whoosh by them. You pass, and they've actually photobombed your photo line, your finish line photo. So when you look at the back and you see a girl in a running skirt with a guy beside her, that's Melissa and Todd. So she just wanted to say thank you for making her famous.
Go Melissa and Todd. Yay! That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much. We've clearly kept you past the time, so appreciate so much both you, Steve, and Camille, and also Conor for coming on. And thank you so much. Congratulations again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. And so thank you to everyone for listening as well. We really appreciate you tuning in. And until next week, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Chandler.
And we'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Camille.
Cool. Thanks, guys. That's fun. Bye.